The security, the transparency, all is built to our DNA. And the trust, in this case, as we have zero trust, don't trust us, always verify. And the open source is the way you can verify.
We have learned that zero trust is about never trusting anyone. Doesn't it mean, Harry, that we are all suspects?
Yes.
And every suspect is guilty? Otherwise, he wouldn't be a suspect?
Exactly.
So I am guilty until proven innocent.
In a sense, yes.
So how can I prove myself innocent without losing my privacy?
Well, that's an excellent question. First of all, proving negative is impossible, so hence you cannot do that. But there's a joke which relates to this. What did a woman who have a dissociative identity disorder tell to her psychotherapist? Let me be frank with you. So we have many identities. Today, those identities are not interconnected. We also have, by the law, right to be forgotten, and we all have, in the extension of the Declaration of Human Rights, right to be anonymous. Yet we need strong identification and strong ID to secure many things. As we discussed in the previous segment, from all the identities we have, humans, we actually are a tiny fraction of the identities because the identities come with all our devices, everything relating to that. So there is a master ID, which is actually you. And then there's a lot of identities which are related to you. And similarly, when we have things we need to protect, the crown jewels have their own identities. So there's two trees, if you may, of different kind of identities. And there's the interconnection between those. If we think about where world is going when we are using in a near future Oracle Cloud kind of master identification platform authorization, there will be one Sophia there, but the different services which are using your identity don't know about each other. They don't know about each other. Your store doesn't need to know same things about you as your bank. So there's an identity, but there's a lot of sub-identities, and the tree goes on. What we learned because of pandemic, when we wanted to do a contact tracing, how we do contact tracing without violating privacy. So there was actually an unprecedented industrial standardization and cooperation, how the big players in the mobile phone world can create a interoperable, so Android and iPhones are communicating with each other, how we're creating this identity so that it doesn't reveal, unless you want, it doesn't reveal anything to the mobile phone operators, the manufacturer of phones, or the governments. So it's a paramount importance that you have right to privacy. If you don't have right to privacy, your civil liberties are at stake. We are, in a Western world, many places we are living in a liberal societies, but that's not the whole human race. We have a lot of oppressive governments, we have a lot of coercion in place. If you don't have privacy, you don't have extension free speech. Free speech is a cornerstone. So we have to make certain that every user, you as a subject of the authentication, you are in the driver's seat, you control, you decide who gets to know your identity. To the extent you decide what information is available, if any. And if you choose to be anonymous, you remain to be anonymous. Otherwise, there would be no need for anyone to accept strong identification. We, as Ori, has one thing which I would say no one else has. We can prove ourselves to be honest because of open source backbone. The security, the transparency, all is built to our DNA. And the trust, in this case, as we have zero trust, Don't trust us, always verify. And the open source is the way you can verify.
So we can say that privacy can coexist with a strong identification.
It has to. It is a requirement. If we would build a strong identity without a privacy and authentication, that would be massive disservice both for security and the society. As a security practitioners, our job is not only to make the world more secure, but make it a better place for everyone. It's a philosophical, it's an ethical, it's part of being human. Try to make it a better place than it was.
Can you give us a concrete example in what scenarios we definitely should maintain our privacy?
There are a lot of professions like attorneys, like medical doctors, who have a legal requirement to never tell anything you share with them. Think about then in a world that a metadata, which was made public, and the problem was made public by Edward Snowden, that data is available with strong identification. If you make a 30-minute call to STV clinic, I don't need to know anything else. I already know what's going on. Hence, you have to have absolute right of privacy that the data that you called there shouldn't be associated with your identification. At the same time, your doctor needs to know who you are so that he or she can give you a prescription. So at the same time, it has to be completely private to everybody else in the world, except that your doctor has to get your ID. The same thing about divorce attorney. The same thing, your attorney has to know who you are, but since you haven't maybe filed a divorce, everybody else should be not knowing because you might not even go through it. So privacy is a paramount importance. It's a cornerstone of a free liberal society. And I could go on with this example. I just made examples which are so outrageously simple that everybody can grasp. But everyday life, we don't want everybody to know, and they shouldn't know, all everything we do. Privacy is a human right.
What are some security gaps today due to the lack of identity?
I will give you a very simple example. Every computer you use. The reason why we have an advanced persistent threats and a very nasty attacks you can send and wholesale distribute is because when we start our computer, the computer doesn't have from the very first second an identity. The identity is built very late in the boot sequence. And because of that, because the identity is too late in a game, you can have a wholesale distribution of a ADP because now it works to every computer of same model instead of individually your computer. Identity is not only you need to have it, it's also you have to have it early enough to protect yourself. Or you want to have it very late in the services because you want to do a lot of actions without revealing who you are. You don't want to tell who you are until you make, for example, a purchasing decision. So you should be preserving your privacy very late in the game. So privacy in identification and ID is a time-sensitive matter. It has to be just in time, not too early, not too late.
Identity and privacy do coexist.
They have to.
How does Ori approach this challenge?
First of all, this challenge is going to be evolving like zero trust. We are going to be building more needs, more approaches into the philosophical and regulatory environments. We cannot predict what laws are coming along. But since we all can agree that privacy is a human right and the extent anonymity is a human right, this is a question which is not would we do it, we have to do it. We have a second layer of problems here. Our current laws are more protecting humans than non-living objects, like your mobile phone. There are properties of your mobile phone which are now recognized to be PII, personally identifiable information, and hence they have a protection of GDPR and similar privacy laws. More and more devices we add to our environment, whether it's home, work environment, or they're wearables, they are always with us, or in the near future, more and more things are going to be embedded into our body. Not only medical devices like pacemakers and insulin pumps, but we are already seeing the first generation of embedded devices. We have become, in 20 years, we are probably going to be much more science fiction cyborgs than who we are today. Every single device has an identity. And whether the laws are requiring those privacy of those devices, if we don't solve and if we don't build from day one privacy of those identities, all the laws of our human privacy will be circumvented by our devices. As we discussed before, the identities, the actual humans, are going to be so tiny fraction of the identities of everything around us, and which is, if they are inside of our body, we really don't get rid of them. So we have to look this whole philosophical issue, the whole what it means to be human, what it means to be identity, how the identities are protected from future-proof approach. There will be a lot of bad actors in this place. There always will be. There's always the snake oil salespeople who are telling, yes, we are doing something and deliberately deceiving you. Again, one thing what Ori does is we are open source core. So we don't want to have a place to hide. You can always check what the code is doing, how it's doing. Also, that information, the identifier information, is extremely beneficial for everybody. So once you have a single identity and your identity gets compromised, that information can be used to protect you, preemptively make sure your bank account doesn't get empty, preemptively using the information one breach to stop future violations. The same way businesses. We know now that this, for whatever reason, this user has changed behavior, maybe something has been stolen, maybe that person has gone rogue, whatever it is, we can preemptively protect. So the massive opportunity and challenge is how we use this information in responsible and privacy protecting way so that we get all the benefit of the threat intelligence of shared single identity with a multi-threaded so that the sub-identities don't know each other, all belonging to you, the tree of identities. So how we get all the threat intelligence to use to protect you as individual human user and the businesses. And this is something what Ori feels this is the core problem we want to solve.
Based on what you said, Harri, there are multiple identities associated with me as a human.
Yes.
So my coffee machine may have an identity.
Absolutely.
How many identities do I have?
Well, first of all, 10 out of 5 doctors think it's okay to be schizophrenic. Oh. We are living in a deeply schizophrenic world. The answer is it's impossible to know how many identities you have. I have no way of finding it out. When we use the contact tracing, our phones created a temporary ephemeral identity for us in every few minutes. So we don't know how many identities are associated with us, but they are not discoverable with our identities. So they're anonymous identities associated with us. We today, when we use a web browser and we go to different websites, it creates cookies, tracking cookies, which are helping advertisers to track your movements outside of those are actually your identities too. When you look how many cookies is in normal website generated, I was going to very normal global news channel, I got 70 cookies from the first click. So 70 new identities spin up if I didn't have those, otherwise they're just tracing. So we have so many identities and they have different level of association with us. Now, some identities are physical. Your mobile phone has an identities called MAC addresses. They are physical addresses associated with the Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and whatnot. Some identities are logical identities. After you have a MAC address, your IP address is given. Some are higher level, they are certificates, cookies, whatnot. Some of the identities we rely on today, both for evil and for good, are going away. Mobile phones are starting to be randomizing MAC addresses to stop tracing of your actions, even from one Wi-Fi network to another across the town. Cookies, which are used for you to do a passwordless sign-in in a web browser, have been massively abused. And so browser manufacturers are drastically attacking now and reducing cookies, which is good for your privacy. But it limits the number of your identities. So the game of identity has been a wild, wild west. What we are trying to do is make it a controlled by you, not by advertisers. The joke always has been that the big brother as the spy agencies, we have nothing to worry about from them comparing how much we have to worry about the advertisers and data brokers. That's the wild, wild west. You are the product. Your identity is being sold over and sold over again. Money is made from your identity and you get not a single penny of it. That's how the world works today. So the answer is, I would guess you probably has, in a mild estimate, tens of thousands of identities associated with you today. And by we going forward, hopefully we generate less identities every day than we could generate today. I hope this is the peak of the insanity of multiple identities which can be associated to you and you are not in control. We have to think about you, because it's your identity, how you are in control of your own identity. And that's why we have to think about how you have sub-identities, how they're isolated from each other, and how this whole schizophrenic world is managed for your benefit.
Well, it's going to be hard to control all those identities.
Again, it's okay to be a little bit schizophrenic.
If you're interested in using Ori in your infrastructure, or you want to find out more about how Ori works, or if you want to get in touch with Ori CISO Harri Hursti, just reach out to us through the Ori website, ori.sh, and we will make it happen.
Thank you for having me. Let's continue this dialogue. And please let Ori to be part of your journey to zero trust.
Thank you, Harri, for your time. I really appreciated talking to you.
Thank you.
Kiitos paljon.
Kiitos.